Okay, so next up in this game's completely incomprehensible plot, we're gonna fight the Navy? As Squidward says, not the Navy. Is there actually a plot you can follow in this, or am I just stupid, or what's going on here? Because I don't know. That one particular death scream, it sounds like a Family Guy when Peter slips and hurts his knee and... Although this came first. Gosh, they really love how you can hit the missiles back at things. Every level they're gonna try to squeeze that mechanic in there. I wonder if that was some kind of like thing that management was vying for. Gotta get that missile volley in there every chance you can. It's like with, if you've ever played Knuckles Chaotix, you can tell somebody in management said, okay, the big feature of the 32X is sprite scaling, so try to put sprite scaling in the game wherever you possibly can. You can definitely tell that that was said at some point during development. It's like there's a way to do sprite scaling without it being obnoxious. I'm just seeing muzzle flashes from those tiny little guys on the deck, and it's like, does that even do anything gameplay-wise? Can they reach me from here? But yes, there's a way to do sprite scaling without it being obnoxious. You just look at Yoshi's Island. The sprite scaling is very tastefully done. It's done sparingly, only at big moments. Compared to Knuckles Chaotix, where it's just completely in your face with the sprite scaling. You are gonna be reminded that this feature exists every 30 seconds, if not more. If I haven't already mentioned, I've got a copy of the Wii Sin and Punishment, just in my vast collection. Not just emulated, but a real, physical, tangible copy of the game that you can feel. I got into retro collecting at just the right time when everything was real cheap, and I've got all kinds of crazy stuff in my collection where it's like, this is probably worth some money these days. I'm so glad I got in on the ground floor with that, because retro collecting nowadays sucks. Or so I've been told, I haven't really checked. Anyway, just on the flip side to that problem with my adventures in art house cinema and out-of-print Blu-rays and such, it's kind of the same problem. There are lots of interesting films out there that I'd like to see, but, they haven't really been in print for some 15 years, and so there's no easy way to get to them. I guess I've missed my opportunity to see Uncle Boone Me Who Can Recall His Past Lives. Maybe somebody out there's willing to organize a trade. I can trade you my copy of Sin and Punishment for the Wii, and in response you can trade me a Blu-ray of Uncle Boone Me Who Can Recall His Past Lives. I might even throw in Muramasa the Demon Blade to sweeten the deal. Maybe not, actually. That's probably a bit too much. It's a Craigslist post waiting to happen. I've got this hyper-specific thing that one person wants, and I want in return this other hyper-specific thing that only one person can provide. Surely this'll work out. Bit of an odd naming scheme for this character, I must say. I don't really see the correlation between giant sci-fi helicopters firing upon you and the name Near Zero Minor. It almost reminds me of Major Minor's Majestic March by Majesco for the Nintendo Wii. Yeah. I'm probably the only human being that's ever made such a connection. You know, that game's from the makers of Parappa the Rapper, by the way. Not like the game Parappa the Rapper, but like the art anyway. Like the guy who drew the character, he had involvement with that game, so... Okay, so we beat him, but we also died at the same time, so make of that what you will. I was wondering if they'd let us skip past it since we technically beat it, but no, sadly, so we'll do take 3. Give it up for take 3. Yes, indeedy. Here's a random thought. You know, if it were up to me, here's how I would fix Game Grumps. You're probably thinking, I didn't know it needed fixing, but okay. So, here's what you gotta do. Since it's been the same cast members every single day, twice a day since 2013, we gotta get a third cast member in there to fix things up. So get like a 68-year-old Orthodox Jew from Hungary, and he can be like their hype man. He can like try to emphasize how funny their jokes are. They can say something funny, and he says, "Oh, I do not know where you come up with such things. Oh." Yeah, and there you go. That'll be the new formula. You could get maybe like, I don't know, another 2 years worth of content out of that. And then we might need a different third cast member after that when that starts to get old. I say as if that won't get old immediately in like the very first episode. So then the third cast member can be, they can get Willem Dafoe. He's really good at acting, so he can act like the show is funny and they're not just like complete no-talent hacks. And that'll help to emphasize things as well. So, yeah, that's my plan to fix Game Grumps. Ba-da-ba. And you know, since I'm on a roll here with fixing other people's channels against their will, we're gonna fix Chugga Conroy too. Okay, here's how we're gonna fix Chugga Conroy. Remember that episode of the Rugrats where Tommy's dad fell off the roof and had a head injury, and suddenly he could understand the babies? Yeah, that's pretty fucked up on paper. Anyway, we're gonna take that episode, and every third episode of Chugga Conroy is gonna be replaced by that particular episode of Rugrats. So every Let's Play is just gonna have huge chunks of it missing, but at least we get to laugh at the funny cartoon from 30 years ago to create levity to break up all of the informational Let's Playing. We need like a comedy break every third episode. So yeah, there you go. That's how we're gonna fix Chugga Conroy. Yeah, that's probably enough fixing other people's channels for one day. God knows what other destructive ideas I might come up with. So, did I mention that this game was a Virtual Console exclusive in the 2000s, by the way? Yes, you did, you're thinking. That has already been mentioned. You know, just looking back on the Virtual Console, you know, I think there was a lot of potential that was just kind of missed, just due to the limitations of licensing and only being able to get certain games on there. From a technical perspective, they could put PS1 games on there. I mean, there would be a copyright nightmare, but if copyright didn't apply, the technology's there to have a Wii run a PS1 emulator. I mean, on the Homebrew channel, they did have a PS1 emulator that you could use. It was only partially functional, but that's a software problem. With proper coding, they could have fixed that up so that it's all theoretically possible. Why, as Christian Bale says, why isn't it possible? You stupid bastard. But yeah, I guess the Virtual Console as a concept isn't really a thing anymore. Because now we've got Nintendo Switch Online, and they figured out they can give you even less. You don't even get to keep the non-transferable ROM anymore. You just rent it for 5 to 10 minutes at a time. What's that old saying that the internet likes to parrot? You will own nothing and you will be happy. You will get nothing and like it. Okay, we seem to be hanging in there with this level. I'm quite impressed with myself, honestly. I'm a sin and punishment pro. Have I mentioned just how, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say fetishistic, but just the concept of sin and punishment, it certainly evokes certain imagery in one's mind. How many Catholic school alumni do you think grew up to be sadomasochists because they were just raised in this incredibly, guilty environment where they're constantly being lectured about sin and being punished and being told they're a bad person and all of that? It's like, we were just trying to teach him about Jesus. We didn't mean to turn him into a sex freak. Whoopsie doodles. I bet that happens a bit more often than people know. But anyway, let's get off this topic. That's gross. Getting back into the history of this game's development, the developers were unusually lax about what they were doing here. There was, Nintendo asked them, when's this game gonna be done anyway? And they basically said, we don't know. It'll get done when it gets done, Which would have been completely unprecedented at the time, knowing the Japanese work ethic. That poor bureaucrat at Nintendo probably just stood there with his mouth hanging open and, what do you mean you don't know when it's gonna get done? Yeah. Him from Powerpuff Girls? Oh, yes. No, that's the oh yes guy from The Simpsons. You guys remember Powerpuff Girls, don't you? Fun show. So I've asked this before, but I'll ask it again. Is there actually a plot here of some kind that can be followed, or is it just totally incomprehensible? Because I know some games do that. I know sometimes the plot's just whatever, like it's a bit of a reach, but if you're familiar with KO Flying Squadron for the Sega CD, the whole opening cutscene, it has all of this Japanese history stuff. It's like, in the 8th year of the KO era, it goes through all of that. And then just a hard cut to meanwhile, and then suddenly it's a fantastical story about like wizards and witches and such.
We didn't write an ending, so we're all together trying to make it better.
They didn't write an ending, but what the heck, I'll still take the check, 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 the check.